Chick-fil-A, ladies and gentlemen, the biggest fraud ever pulled on American Christians. That this is some type of, like, Christian company. Shame on them. Shame on them. Let me tell you what. Go read your Gospels. Let me tell you someone who wasn't tolerant. Christ. Tolerance is not a Christian virtue.
Straight facts, no chaser. By now, you realize how fearful racist white men are. They're turning to the Bible to shift people's ideology. That's how they started slavery and every other massacre they've been able to accomplish in history. Mainly because nobody was awake. That's why there's so much against woke. Because why? They think black people infiltrated the world so that you guys can see now. You got on your oppression goggles. Even though you're not oppressed, you can see what the fuck we've been talking about for centuries. They don't like that because that means their power is diminishing. Their numbers are diminishing. Even people whom they groomed to love them, even though they were destroying their people, other cultures outside of being black, they're waking the fuck up. And these racists can't fucking stand it. Now they're trying to colonize the Bible again. Talking about Jesus was not tolerant. I don't even have to crack open the book to be able to break this theory, fake-ass theory, down. Let's read the definition of tolerance. The ability or willingness to tolerate something, in particular the existence of opinions or behavior that one does not necessarily agree with. He wasn't tolerant. You think he agreed with being crucified? Think about it. Jesus Christ. You mean the man who was God's son? Only son at that, whom he bestowed upon the powers that he possessed, being able to turn water into wine, put ears back on that have been cut off, heal the sick. All these stories, right? This power. Yet, when those who support him and loved him saw him being torn apart as they dragged him through the square, as he holds the very instrument they're about to hang him on, getting his ass beat, none of those Christians who loved him fucking lifted a finger. Yet they're the ones who are tasked with writing the story about this man. Does that shit make sense to you? And would Jesus want them to write any fucking thing for him? They couldn't stand up for him, let alone now you're gonna write a story? The fuck out of here. If he wasn't tolerant, he'd have fucking killed him, right? If he wasn't tolerant, do you think he would allow those people to whip his ass when he could turn around and turn them into dust? If he wasn't tolerant when they were beating him, did he or did he not just take it? And when they put nails into his hand, it couldn't have felt good. And into his feet, of course that didn't feel good. What did he have to say? Father, forgive them for they know not what they do. Or something to that effect. The fuck is that? If you're the most powerful thing on the fucking planet, that's all you got to say? Well, if you're not tolerant, then you would have struck those bitches down, wouldn't you? You tolerated that shit. You talk about tolerance. He is the epitome. If you look up tolerance, Jesus Christ is the only face that should be in that motherfucker. And you're going to sit here and try and gaslight people and tell the most tolerant person that ever walked the face of this fucking earth is not tolerant? Then who the fuck is? Take the word out the fucking dictionary because nobody else fits that motherfucking category more than Jesus Christ did. The dumbest shit I ever heard, right? You're going to sit here and let this piece of shit degrade your Jesus, your savior, and say that he wasn't tolerant. Then what was he? Weak? The fuck is it? You can't have it both ways. Why? Because he's saying you shouldn't do what Jesus Christ said to do. Jesus wouldn't have been tolerant of these people who are not of him or like him. Might I remind you, none of us are like Jesus Christ. So that means he wouldn't have been tolerant even of us, right? The reality is, you're talking about a man that did not punish those who took his own life. He just rose up 3 days later and didn't have the wrath of God against him, just bounce and said he'd come back later. Do you really think Jesus Christ agreed with being crucified? Or was he tolerant? Because all he said was, Father, forgive them for they know not what they do. So what are you trying to say? Was Jesus more powerful in being tolerant? Or was he weak and just couldn't handle it and just let them kill him? I'm trying to figure it out. Because if you listen to this motherfucker, your Jesus was a weak human being. I don't believe that. That's what he's saying. I believe he was patient. I believe he was loving and kind. I believe that if he had the powers of the Almighty, then he could have struck any one of them down at any given time. Your question should be, why didn't he? Not to say we shouldn't be tolerant, because trust and believe those who do not protect Jesus, whom he was healing this whole time, he was tolerant not to strike down the believers at that time, did he? He should have, but he had tolerance. I speak facts, straight facts. Fuck your feelings.